How do you preamble a multi-part series? Try to come up with something witty each time? A little combination of words for combination's sake? Or just get straight to the point? Last time we gave you an overview of all the core set heroes and everything up to before the first big box expansion. Now remember, this is not meant to be a where can I find the best cards guide, but simply a breakdown of what each hero does, is good at and not so good at, and why you may or may not want to exchange funds for its purchase. Pause it happen again. Ramble over, let's just do this. We start today with the Rise of Red Skull box set. The first big box expansion brought us two new heroes, the alphabetically first of which was Hawkeye, and a jolly good effort was made on his on-point mix of theme and mechanics. A shoddy basic power stat line is belied by everything that surrounds it, including his alter ego that allows him to fetch his zero cost upgrade. Upgrading his basic attack to 3 is out to sniff at. You then only need to take a peek at his suite of arrows to see how flexible he is with his hero power. Each arrow covering off all different types of problems. And well, the cherry on top is his quiver that gives you a place to expand your hand. Hawkeye is beginner friendly, but also brings a straightforward approach to smashing face. Whilst Hawkeye exemplified everything cool about Marvel Champions to date, it was Spider-Woman that stole the show in this box, largely because we now had our first multi-aspect hero to construct decks with. Yes, it was only 2 aspects and you needed an equal share of each, but she's also so synergistic with aspect cards, which are pound for pound usually weaker than signature cards. Her signature ally Captain Marvel is stock, but pays you back for her increased cost, and her alter ego support keeps the aspect cards coming. But wait, she has 2 of each of the 4 aspects in her signature suite as well, with each leaning in just the direction you'd expect it to. Spider-Woman is and was a perfect example of the game's core systems and how they could be built upon. Did they rest on their laurels at that point? No, because we got our first team-up pair of heroes. Not only that, Ant-Man was the first identity with 3 forms. You've got Scott Lang alter ego side, which requires 0 explanation, and then you've got tiny hero Ant-Man for all your thwarting and hand size 5 needs, and giant hero Ant-Man for when combat is the only option. Whilst you can still only switch form natively once per turn, there are 0 restrictions what forms you do it in. His signature ally Wasp is also his team-up partner, and who's better than your average 3-2-2-3 bear? His suite of events will stop you from camping in giant form and offers some cool modular abilities. And really, Ant-Man is just a blast to play top to bottom and will really help with your sequencing and form changing decision making. Speaking of Wasp, here she is in hero form. Her basic power stat line in her tiny hero form doesn't do too much to get the blood racing, but her giant stat line is more well rounded than her compadres. What the on both hero forms suggests though is she was designed to play in a multiplayer format, or at least in 2-player, in team up. Anything leaning into dealing with side schemes and multiple minions will be very handily dealt with by Small Wasp or Big Wasp. Returning the favour, her signature ally Ant-Man is pretty much comparable, bringing slightly less value but slightly more flexibility. The rest of her signature suite is solid, if ever so slightly weaker in a vacuum than Ant-Man's. So as a standalone character, she's a smidge weaker, but still a good foil or alternative if you don't dig ants. Quick sidebar, as I've already mentioned, this being the first team-up duo, the first of many at this point, these types of cards can be really helpful in multiplayer, but don't do a great deal for you true solo players out there. Unless, of course, you time your signature allies to a T. FFG obviously enjoyed this buddy action so much that hot on the heels was Quicksilver, the ultimate turn sideways hero, whose statline at first glance may make you want to cry, but until you see the text ability that suggests the game plan is death by 1,000 cuts. His alter ego has one of the better ways to cycle your hand, and his signature allied teammate Scarlet Witch gives a preview of her gimmick. Good job you can cycle with Pt2 because you want one or some of these upgrades out to turn Quicksilver into an all-singing, all-dancing, do-it-all hero. With the package of events at your disposal, you'll do well to keep that grin off your face when you tap, smack, untap, tap, thwack, and so on and so forth. Good stuff. Scarlet Witch was the first hero I severely underrated. Not that she's the second coming of the one above all or anything, but she had and has much more game than I initially gave her credit for. The hero side gives you a hint of what to expect. Lots of encounter deck manipulation and mitigation, but a built-in joker against boost cards can be extremely potent. Alter Ego echoes her Brosif cycling capabilities, and Signature Ally is decent but somewhat one-track. Chaos Magic is a card that really encapsulates what she's good at: value. Trust me when I say that the value of Rampage that this card gives you at the cost of speeding up the game clock is fantastic. Yes, there's a decent chunk of volatility on all this encounter deck drawing, but generally speaking, the worst case scenario with each card is not a bad outcome. So, in hindsight, Scar Witch brings fun factor and power level in one healthy package. And just like that, we're in the second big box expansion, Galaxy's Most Wanted. Good old Groot is first and foremost a tank, not necessarily by virtue of a fairly middling health pool, but damage mitigation is written all over his alter ego and hero forms, and 3 defense helps of course, but in some ways the high defense undermines that damage prevention from his growth counters. As you'd expect, a decent chunk of the signature suite centres around accruing said counters, but because his hero ability is a forced interrupt, you don't have as much control as you'd like to try and maximise the payout of some of these cards. Suffice to say though, if you like the idea of being front and centre when the damage is coming your team's way, then Groot is a solid choice for that role. I was just feeling there was some tweak that could have been made here to give you a bit more agency. Groot's companion in the big box is the old rascal himself, Rocket Raccoon. Interestingly, it's Alter Ego Rocket that gives you a clearer picture of what's going on with this upgrade-centric hero. Suffice to say though, the power of this identity is not its main card. That would be his tech upgrades, which thankfully come in with charge counters, but can be topped up as well, unlike most upgrades and supports that have uses. All of this kit is really nice by the way, and being able to ready these cards can quickly ramp into a Death Star of a hero, but I would love to have seen a way to cycle or fetch for some of them. Still, if you like the idea of loading up to the apocalypse and then unleashing hell, then you can do a lot worse than Double R. So, to be honest, those 2 big box heroes were fairly underwhelming compared to the first big box's Hawkeye and Spider-Woman, and really didn't set the bar for the Guardians of the Galaxy very high. However, green shoots were soon to appear with the release of Gamora, the second hero released with alternative deck construction options. Here you could take attack and thwart events from any aspect. Now, does that hint of a somewhat front foot hero or what? Just look at that glorious multi-purpose ability that covers both important in-game bases. Her signature ally Nebula directly feeds into what your hero wants, which is great. And the low-cost signature attack and thwart events help you play 1 each a turn to maximise that hero ability. It's a genuine pleasure to play Gamora, and she's a very well-rounded identity. Star-Lord, on the other hand, and as the hero side states, is a push your luck identity. Honestly, ramp abilities like this are near and dear to my heart, but you can't afford to be too blasé about using that discount ability willy-nilly. Starting with his element gun in hand and the soft cycling ability off the top of your deck is a nice cherry on top of an intriguing identity card. His signature ally is situationally great, but most of the time a second choice, and there's a lot more no risky no bisky in his signature suite. Thankfully, there are some payoffs for all those face-down encounter cards you will inevitably have in front of you. I think it's fair to say that said payoffs needed to be tuned slightly more powerfully, but nonetheless Star-Lord lets you shine bright, even if for just a short while. Next up was Drax, where they showed us what could have been for my poor, underfed Hulk. As you can see from his hero ability, you want to get those multiple vengeance counters on him. That way you can cap out of 4 basic attack. The less said about his attempts to thwart, the better. Flipping to alter ego undoes a lot of your hard work, but the heal is usually enough to forego recovering, so it's not all sad panda. His signature ally is a nice offset and complement to his one-sided nature, but then it's all about a very nice suite of signature cards. There's nary a dud in here, and there's a lot more versatility than can be found on his identity card. There are simply synergies abound with Drax, and everything has its place. Very nice. And then there came a Venom, an exceptionally strong weapon-centric identity. Venom carries such a strong base, not necessarily in the stat line which is middling, but generating a resource for 1 damage. Yes please, I'll take an equivalent hand size of 6 in hero form, thank you. And well, there's a reason restricted cards are capped at 2, right? Because they're usually pretty good. Oh, and wait, you get a guaranteed weapon in your hand at the start of the game. To be fair, there isn't any wow moments in the signature suite, but you've got some mitigation, some threat management, some event attacks, all benefiting from the wild resource your hero can generate each phase. Mostly though, it's just about turning weapons sideways and being firmly ensconced on the front foot. Which brings us to the last hero we talk about today, Nebula, a hero that very much operates in her waves due to her special ability unleashing the techniques you played the turn before. This card drawer on the alter ego side if you really want to build up to a big turn, and her signature ally Gamora lets you conveniently find more techniques, which is definitely the theme for the hero. As you can see, all the techniques have passive benefits during the turn you play them, so there's a nice feeling to their multi-purpose, and it definitely adds a new twist to how you sequence things. Combat Ready and Lethal Intent help you refuel and mess around with timings, so ultimately Nebula brings something a little bit different. Not wacky by any means, but enjoyable. And so we made it through 2 whole blocks. There was some great stuff here. No complete and utter stinkers, although I feel Groot was a bit of a missed opportunity. My favourites, and I mean fun factor wise in this lot, were probably Spider-Woman, loved the deck construction tweaks, Ant-Man, loved me some form changes, Quicksilver, because who doesn't like to turn cardboard sideways, Gamora for similar reasons to Spider-Woman, Star-Lord because pushing your luck is fun, and Drax because this is how superhero brute should be done. Still, I hope this was an informative experience and helped you on your consumer journey. Stay tuned for next time when we take a look at the Mad Titan Shadow and Sinister Motives blocks. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.